Welcome to Veterans Corner, and it's an honor and a privilege to be a guest in your home today. And for our interviewee is Mr. Lafayette Parish Assessor, Justin Centanni. Centanni, okay. And here today to share with you about this exactly what the Assessor Office does, and of course the process that they go through as well. So thank you for coming on board, sir.
Good morning, Greg. How are you?
Fine, pretty good. Well, look, tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do as an assessor.
Oh, sure. So, I grew up in Thibodaux. I came to Lafayette when I was 18 years old to go to USL, and like a lot of men in Lafayette, I met my wife, and she's from Abbeville, and so here I am. Here I am still today.
Yes.
And there's a lot of men like that around Lafayette Parish, for sure. But the tax assessor, our office, is responsible for identifying and valuing all property within Lafayette Parish. So that's every home, every piece of land, every commercial building. All of that goes into creating what we produce every year as the tax roll, which then leads to the ad valorem taxes that get levied every year by the various taxing bodies. So our job and what we're going through, what we're doing pretty heavily right now, is making sure we're adding all new homes and businesses to the tax roll right now. So it's April.
Okay.
Right
yes.
now, right?
Yes.
Depending on when somebody watches this, it's April right now, and by July 1st, we're going to have all of those new pieces of property added.
Okay.
And then by September 1st, we're going to have our tax roll ready to be submitted to the state. For approval.
All right. When it comes to the commercial side and the individual or private side, rather, are there two different programs or two different processes that you go through to evaluate?
There are. So every piece of property starts off with what's referred to as the fair market value, and that's generally speaking the price that anybody would pay for it in the open market. So that's an easy number to come by for a residential home, right? So you can look at homes nearby that are similar to the home you're talking about, see what those homes sold for, and come up with a pretty reasonable estimate of what any particular home or piece of land might sell for if the owner wanted to sell it, right? Commercial property gets a fair market value, although there are a couple of different ways that we can derive that fair market value. One is, of course, recent sales of similar property.
Right.
The other is an income that it generates. You can amortize a certain amount of income, annual income, over a number of years, and come up with a value for that property that an investor might be willing to pay. You and I don't think. Look, I don't want to speak for you. I don't buy shopping centers. But the investors that do, what they are looking at when you go to sell it is how much income can I generate off of this property. And that's what drives their price. They're not going to pay $20 million for a piece of property that makes $5,000 a year,
right.
So commercial properties are a little different in how we come up with fair market value than residential properties. Once we get the fair market value of these properties, then we come up with what's called the assessed value. The assessed value for a residential property and all land is 10% of its fair market value.
10%.
So if you have a $100,000 house, we say your house is $100,000, then your assessed value is $10,000. Okay? Commercial property a little different. Assessed value is 15% of its fair market value. So same $100,000 house, if maybe you have a $100,000 car wash, something like that, right? Well, the car wash's assessed value will be $15,000. The house's assessed value will be $10,000.
Okay.
Then once we get that, then we levy the tax rate that the different taxing bodies levy that the voters have approved, and it's usually expressed in terms of mills. So in Lafayette Parish, in the unincorporated part of the parish, we levy right at 85 mills of ad valorem tax. 1 mill is $1 per $1,000 of assessed value. So keeping with our example, that $10,000 house, if we levied 1 mill against it, it would be $10 would be the tax bill. $1 per $1,000 of assessed value, right? So a $10,000 assessed value. I know, right? I get why people don't dig too deep into this stuff.
Yes.
But if we have the $10,000 assessed value, we levy $1 per thousand. That's $1,000. So $10 for 1 mill.
How did you arrive at the 10% or the 15?
That's in the Constitution.
That's in the Constitution?
That's in the Constitution of Louisiana.
So automatically it's 10% for the private property and 15% for the commercial property?
That's correct.
So what does that tax cover? Because I know for me, when I was living in Lafayette Parish, it had a whole host of things that
we still have a whole host of things, right? So the school board, and I think this is the same in most parishes in the state. The Lafayette Parish school system levies the most
Okay.
of that. They levy right at about 35 mills out of that 85.
Okay.
Okay, so it's right, a little bit about 37% of the ad valorem taxes that people pay across the parish go to the school system. The Lafayette Parish Council certainly levies some ad valorem taxes to support a number of services like the library, the airport, they have some roads and bridges and drainage millages. The Lafayette Parish Sheriff levies 2 millages, right at about 18 mills to support his operations. So that goes for everything from deputies to cars to handcuffs, I would assume, right? Anything it takes to operate a sheriff's office.
Yeah.
And then you have some smaller entities. So the Lafayette Economic Development Authority has a millage. My office has a millage. That's where we get our funding from, is from a millage. And then we have the Bayou Vermilion District, which runs Vermilionville and is responsible, I think, for kind of cleanliness and beautification of the Vermilion River.
Okay.
And then the Bayou Vermilion, I can't remember which. Teche Vermilion.
Okay.
They're very similarly named.
I know.
The Teche Vermilion Freshwater District, which is the organization, and they're a multi-parish organization, and they operate the system of gates and locks between Bayou Catawba and the Vermilion River, which is where the Vermilion River gets its fresh water from. You know, if we didn't have that system in place, then the Vermilion River would be stagnant.
Okay. How does it happen? Well, let's say the process. When a person buys a home, he comes to you and what is my.
So what'll happen
For
when
a
you
new-
buy
yeah.
what'll happen when you buy a home is you'll go to a title attorney who will do the closing for you,
Okay.
and then you'll sign what feels like 1,000 pieces of paper, and then that title attorney will take your paperwork and he'll go to the clerk of court, and he will record that property transfer, right? So
Okay.
in the clerk of court's records, there needs to be a document filed, signed by the owner and signed by the buyer, saying,
Okay.
I'm transferring this property to this person right here, right? And then once he files that at the clerk of court, we get a copy of that in my office. We will transfer the ownership of that property from the seller to the buyer and change the mailing address if necessary for the property tax bill so that you'll start to receive.
Well, in today's economy, the way the budget is nowadays, how tight or how loose or what kind of budget you have, because people are cutting back. How does that affect the major parts of this organization?
So, we really are a reactive and kind of a trailing indicator of what's going on in Lafayette Parish.
Okay, you have.
And so we don't really have any kind of influence on things outside of just to say we're here to reflect reality, right? And so I think when people are cutting back, and look, I'm a homeowner and a taxpayer just like everybody else in this parish, right? My budget gets squeezed just like everybody else's. My homeowner's insurance is
Yes.
darn near unaffordable. And so, but what we are able to do, kind of the information that we have and the work that we do, is to go back. We go basically back in time and say, okay, what did sales look like in Lafayette Parish? What did values look like in Lafayette Parish? And it's our job to reflect that reality and make sure that those values that we're placing on properties are fair, that everybody can understand where they're coming from, and that we don't have any huge discrepancies, from house to house and from neighborhood to neighborhood. Because, ultimately, I don't want two neighbors to live next to each other and go on my website and look at each other's values and go, well, I wonder how he got, why is his house so low and mine is so high? That means we didn't do our job,
Right.
if that's the case.
I know in the past, that's not on your watch, okay? But years ago, when I was a subcontractor, we were remodeling homes. In 1 year, the house was sold 3 times. And each time, the realtor automatically added on 15%.
No kidding.
Yes.
And did it sell
Yes.
all 3 times?
Yes.
My goodness.
And I asked, how can you do that? Is that the real value? But of course, the value is whatever you want to pay.
The easy answer is if it's sold, then that must be the value,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
So it's something like that. I mean, that's a significant
Oh,
event,
yeah, without a doubt.
because I don't know how would you one would say this and one would say that, but I'm not putting you on the spot or anything.
No, it's fine. It's fine. So look, we have a pretty good rule of thumb here, and what we do is whenever a home sells, whenever a property sells, we go and we take that new sale price and we put it on the tax roll at 93% of what it sold for, and we feel pretty confident that that's a good market value, because there are times when maybe somebody, you can never say somebody overpaid for something because that's what it's worth. They were willing to pay it, right? But you can certainly say there are certainly times when somebody buys a piece of property and maybe that's at the top of the market and maybe there's a little dip, right? And so I don't want to have somebody's value that they're paying taxes on be at the top of a market. What I want more than anything is if anybody ever wants to sell their property, they need to be able to sell it for their value that I have with no trouble, right? Because I don't want anybody paying taxes on value that they can't realize, that they can't get.
In a situation like that, have you ever had private individuals come to you and say, look, I don't understand?
Absolutely.
In other words, what process do you go? You sit down with them, try to explain to them the same thing that what you're telling us right now.
Absolutely.
Because I know several neighbors, okay, one or two of them have said, I don't understand this, and I think I'm being charged too much.
Well,
So
we have every year, somewhere around August 15th to the second half of August, we have, by law, we're required to open our office for 2 weeks and let the public come in to dispute their assessed value.
Really?
And absolutely.
Okay,
absolutely.
okay.
And look, look, the public's welcome to come any time of the year. They don't have to wait until August, right? But August is when we have finalized and we know what their value is for that year. And most people year to year don't get a change in value because they didn't sell their house, they didn't add on to their house. Like my house's value went up in the last reassessment. It didn't go up the couple of years prior to that because I didn't do anything. But it went up the year before that because I added on a guest house, right? And so like whenever you add something on or otherwise improve your house, then we're going to come out and take a look and make sure we have a correct value. But most of the time, year to year, people's assessed values aren't going to change. But when they do, we have this period where my staff and I are here. That's all we do all day is answer questions and make sure that everybody's comfortable and understands how we arrived at their value. Plus, we don't know, we're not omnipotent.
Right.
We don't know every last detail of every single property in Lafayette Parish.
Yeah.
We know the broad outlines, right? We know how many acres a piece of land is. We know, generally speaking, about how many square feet a home is. And we use that information to kind of come up with an assessed value, making sure that homes in the same neighborhood are generally in the same price per square foot range, things like that. But maybe there's something about this person's piece of property that we don't understand. Maybe the back half of it floods, and so the back half of it, the value is actually zero.
Okay.
Right? Or maybe, what we see from our aerial footage, our aerial photography, is a roof is only like half of it is actually air-conditioned square footage. The other half is a really huge patio or something like that.
Okay.
And so, we would be applying a price per square foot to a patio that's not true. And when those cases are brought to our attention, we absolutely change assessed values all the time to make sure, like I said earlier, that we reflect reality,
Because I know I have a piece of property in another parish. And for some reason, we kept getting, actually, I got it through tax sales because of its family, inheritance, And we were getting charged. I was paying it. And then one day I went to the property. I don't visit it, stuff like that. But I said, this can't be right. So I went to them and said, can you come review or see my property and see what you can do? Well, they did go and they said, well, okay, yeah, we understand your property is 2 acres. The home is there. A tree is in the home. We definitely would drop it. So you dropped it almost like about 75%.
Yeah, I mean, look, we went. Look, one of my appraisal manager and I were driving down West Bayou Parkway yesterday, coming back from a lunch we went to, and we saw on the corner of Woodvale and West Bayou Parkway that they had the equipment out there and they were demoing a house. And so legitimately, I looked at him and I said, hey, when we get back to the office, why don't you take that house off the account? Like, it's not there anymore.
Right.
They're not putting it back, or I assume they're going to put one back, but when they do, we're going to get a building permit from the city of Lafayette, and, we'll go through our processes to add a new building on. But in the meantime, that's a pretty significant part of the value of that property that's not there.
Yeah. I've run across that. Also, too, when you're making the assessment, got certain property here in Lafayette Parish. I did have a little retail store and everything else. Excuse me. But there were certain guidelines that I had to follow in order to build. Okay, like I had to have so many spaces for parking and stuff like that. But there's been some areas here, some businesses has been there for generations, and really there's no parking hardly any. For that business to continue, to just go like it's grandfathered in, for them to build.
That's really more of a planning and zoning question right there.
I'm trying to ask questions that.
I know, right? I know. Look, so I was on the school board for 9 years, and we built a lot of schools, and we dealt pretty frequently with the planning and zoning department at Lafayette Consolidated Government, and it's a maze to be sure to make sure you're meeting all the qualifications and all the guidelines, and trying to build your project to their specifications.
Now, when a client does come in, whenever they do come in, they see the clerk, okay, and from there, the clerk directs them to whatever department or whatever.
Yeah, we have 3 ladies who sit in our front desk when you walk in the door, and they're there to help you, and they can handle most of the routine things. We get a lot of address change forms, right? People needing their tax bill sent to a new address, or people coming in to fill out homestead exemption forms, or in the case of our veterans, the veterans homestead exemption forms with your and we'll talk about that more later, right? Yeah. But the ladies up front, they can help you with most routine things. If you're here to understand how we arrived at your assessed value, then they'll call one of our appraisal employees to come up and say, okay, and they'll bring you back to the office and they'll walk you through it. And like I like to tell people all the time that it's okay if it's wrong. If it's wrong, we'll fix it.
Right.
But it's not wrong just because we don't like it. Just because we don't want to pay that much in taxes. I mean, I don't want to pay as much as I pay in taxes either, but I do, right? Because my value is fair.
Right.
And so if it's wrong, then as long as there's a reason and you can demonstrate why it's wrong, then we're happy to make it right.
Okay. Okay. When you mentioned the word veteran.
Yes, sir.
What type of? I know I'm in St. Martin Parish, and I no longer pay taxes.
That's right.
Property taxes, because I'm also a senior citizen besides being a veteran.
You qualify for everything, right? You qualify for everything.
Yes.
You're a disabled veteran now?
Yes, I
am.
Yes,
and from you saying you don't pay any taxes, that must mean you're 100% disabled.
Well, I'm about 70, working to 100.
Okay.
The way things work out, but
I guess you don't live in a city. No, you live right outside Orneville. That's right.
Well, I don't live in the city, but I live in St. Martin Parish. But the thing is here, not many people know that. I know you send out information.
Yeah.
Like they sent me information, and I applied and everything else. But I'm surprised that there are a lot of people out here who are not aware of that.
Yeah, it's true. So just for those listening at home or watching, veterans, and in particular disabled veterans, have a host of entitlements that the voters in Louisiana have granted them. And this is all in the Louisiana Constitution. These benefits, right? And so, if you're a disabled veteran and you're between 50 and I'm going to try to get these numbers right.
I'm close to 80, so
if you're between 50 and 74% disabled, then you get an additional $2,500 of homestead exemption. Now I'm going to say $2,500. I want you to think back to our assessed value.
Right.
10% of fair market value.
Right.
10%. So when I say $2,500, that means you're getting $25,000 off the market value.
Okay.
But it's a $2,500 off your assessed value exemption. If you are between 75 and 99%, then you get an additional $4,500 of homestead exemption. And if you're 100% disabled, and all of this has an income requirement, yeah? No, this one doesn't have the income requirement. One of them does. This one doesn't have the income requirement. If you're 100% disabled, get this: you pay no property tax.
Okay.
At all.
That's good.
I mean, who doesn't want that one, right?
Now you said between 50 and 74.
Yes.
Okay.
And this is as validated. I can't remember the actual form number right now, but we validate that with the Department of Veterans Affairs.
Okay. Now, do you take on individual cases, because maybe there is a veteran that's under 50 who is disabled and 100% or whatever.
Well, no, it's not 50 years old. 50 to 75% disabled.
Oh, 50. Okay.
Yeah. There is no age requirement on this.
Okay. There you go.
As long as the Veterans Affairs will tell us that you're 50% disabled, then and you're in a house that you already have your homestead exemption on, you get an extra homestead exemption.
Well, all I do know is that in talking with veterans, which I do a lot, and I'm finding out that information you're saying right now, they're not aware of as well.
I know and they're paying, and look, they're paying taxes, and they're I want people to get what they're qualified for, right? Whether you're a homeowner that doesn't have a homestead exemption on your house because you've just never filled out the card, or whatever the case may be, these are entitlements and benefits that the voters have said this is what we want our tax structure to look like. And I'd really want it's the same if you're a 70-year-old senior citizen who hadn't had their house value frozen, right? I mean, same thing. I want everybody to come in and get the benefits to which they're qualified.
Yeah, I do know that with the veteran side, everything you've said, I think they're involved. They're qualified to get involved with you, because as a veteran, we have barriers and obstacles that's above the everyday.
I agree.
Troubles we all go through. And sometimes people get involved with veterans and say, why are you not paying this one and I'm paying this over here? It gets rather confusing to a lot of people.
Absolutely.
And for me, veterans need to be aware of everything that's out there that they qualify for. And even dealing with them, I'm finding out that the VA have processes and programs that they're not even aware of.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I started Veterans Corner, to provide information by going to national leaders, state leaders, local politicians, businesses, nonprofit organizations, to share information with the veterans and the community overall.
Well, thank you for doing that. And look, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this, because one of my friends is Andy Ward, who has started the Acadiana Veterans Alliance.
Yeah, right.
And that's been a great resource for us to try to get information in the hands of veterans so they can decide and see what they're qualified for. But I find veterans every week. I found one last week that got another homestead exemption. He was I think 85% disabled, and he wasn't taking advantage of it. So. We're trying our best, and I appreciate opportunities like this to try to get the word out more.
Because we do fall into a category that's, I guess, say, unique.
Right.
Okay. And I'm just hoping that the overall community would understand what we go through. But at the same time, though, there are a lot of veterans out there that, especially young veterans, and they're not, because they're young, they don't think they qualify. But the VA does not share enough information with the veterans. But all I can say is, I hate to say it, this conversation is ending. This interview is ending. So just give me a little short wrap up or summary about what you think you'd go over what you've just talked about.
So look, we really want the veterans to come into the office and find out what you're qualified for. My staff will help you every step of the way figure out what documentation you need, because we do need documentation. All of this is in the Constitution, and we don't have it. Like, if you're 48% disabled, we can't help you. Right? This is all very black and white on what the qualifications are. But if you are qualified for these extra homestead exemptions or the 100% exemption from ad valorem taxation, we want the veterans to take advantage of that.
Well, I tell you what, my friend, thank you very much.
Oh, appreciate it, Greg.
Thanks for coming on board, and maybe we'll get another little interview in the future.
Anytime.
Okay.